and trying to do that virtual learning piece. I'm recording this also, so then I'll be able to send the link out. So again, we have too many people to introduce ourselves with, but thank you, Roosevelt School District teachers, for coming out, and for AJ, who's here. So she's from New York, from the Academy of Nursing Careers, I believe. So welcome, and we'll go ahead and get started. Again, for me, I'm Jamie Kostick. I live in Denver, Colorado now. I did live in Tucson. Kind of through the midst of this, I moved. Again, I taught high school math at Amphitheater District for 10 years, and then I was a district math coordinator for 3. And then before actually teaching, I was a chemist for Abbott Laboratories for 6 years. So kind of done a lot of different things, but all of my educational stuff was down in Tucson, Arizona for Amphitheater District. And then now working across the country with teachers through all the different districts. So today what we're really going to look at is we're going to analyze and understand all the MATHia reports and how you can use them with your students, especially in this virtual learning environment. But you're also going to be able to use these same reports next year.
A little bit deeper into the program and look at the kind of data that you're going to have.
And
so
hold
that
on.
you can use that data to plan instruction. And then beyond the 29.
All right. Dave, unmute yourself again.
We might be doing that a lot today. Sorry, I don't have controls to jump in and do that.
Oh, you know what? Let me give you that control, Dave.
Okay.
Sorry. And then I can make you a co-host, and then you can do everything too.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'll mute people if we have to.
Okay, and then we're going to discuss setting goals and how to celebrate successes with your students. All right, so driven by data. With MATHia, we actually have 5 different reports. We have a sessions report, we have a skills report, we have the progress report, standards report, and we have the applause report, which is actually a short for an adaptive personalized learning score. We're going to go through all of these today. We're going to talk about the ones you would probably use the most for the virtual learning. And then we'll also talk about the applause report at the end, because this is going to be one that you probably will use, you will use a lot next year as we work through the software throughout our blended learning curriculum. All right, so there are some report user guides that you can always go into and look. I'm going to actually type these into the chat box. Let me see if it will go so that you guys can have them. Hold on. My chat box isn't coming up. Let me see, here we go. Okay.
Sometimes you have to go to more, Jamie, to get
I know. But there we go. Okay, let's see if this will work. Did it do it? No. I'll just click on it and we'll go to this reports handbook. So again, this is going to give you an idea of everything that's that you guys have access to and what each of the reports will stand, or what each of the reports are. I actually don't like that one. I'll put them in just a second because I don't like that one. Dave, if you can find the actual one from our reports handbook, that would be great. Otherwise, I'll go ahead and just find them.
Tell me the name of the one you're looking for. Tell me the one you're looking for.
It's the reports hand guide.
Okay.
Sorry.
Got it. Yep, I'll go look for it.
And go ahead and link that into the chat box. That would be great. Then you guys will have the reports hand guide. It's linked in the chat box, so you can copy it and then paste it into your URL. And you guys will have access to it, and you don't have to go search for it. So again, we're going to go ahead and go through some of our reports. The first report that you guys are going to see is called a progress report. So the progress report is kind of your big picture of what it is that your students are working on. Right now, during this virtual learning time, I think it's going to be probably one of your quickest ways to see how well students are doing and if they're staying on track with what you need them to do as you set the goals with them, in order for them to know where they need to be at the end of each week with the MATHia. With the progress report, you can change the date range to be whatever date range you need it to be. It doesn't have to be a 7-day period. It can be whatever period you guys need it to be or want it to be. So here, again, you can just select where you want the progress report to show to, and then you just click apply. You do have some automatic options where it gives you the last 7 days or this month, or the start of class from the beginning of the year to now, which I really like in the year-long part. But again, if we're looking to see where students are at, if they're staying on track with what we want them to be doing, then we can go ahead and just look at our last 7 days, or we can look at the month. You can also set a custom range. So you can look and see, just instead of the last 7 days, the custom range, you can actually pick your exact dates that you want, and then you just click apply, and that is what will show as they work through this. With the progress report, anywhere that you see green means that students have completed their workspace with that 95% mastery. If it's a content building workspace, that means they tried the problems and they did them in the appropriate amount of time that we know across the country is the average time for students to work through the content building workspaces. So if they have green, that's really good, and those are the workspaces and the units that you don't need to worry about. You'll also see that it will tell you that students have not mastered certain workspaces, which means if they have it where it shows that they have not mastered a workspace, it's going to tell you, if you click on that square that's orange, it'll bring up more information for each student depending on which square you clicked on and for which student. So, but what it's going to tell you is the module name, the unit, the workspace. It tells you the date that they were promoted or moved forward. Students are moved forward for a couple of reasons. One of it is that we recognize, okay, we know that you're not going to master it no matter how many problems we give you. So we need the teacher to intervene, and we need the teacher to do some reteaching before you go back and try this workspace again. Or because we do select problems based on where they're struggling, that they have ran out of problems and we don't have any more of that particular type to give them. So that means that we move them on. But again, they're going to show up on a different report, and you will know exactly where you need to reteach with them. So they can get promoted or not mastered, and we're going to let them go ahead and move forward, but we're going to tell you as a teacher, the student struggled with these particular workspaces. You also are going to be able to see which workspace they are actually working on right now. Incomplete, you probably you shouldn't get many incomplete ones. Where you might see this is if you have a student that comes in the middle of the year and you're already like halfway through the curriculum, and you unlock them or move them to where you are right now instead of having them start from the beginning, and then you change their placement to be exactly where you are. That's the only time that you probably will see an incomplete, and all it's telling you is that that particular unit or workspace was not completed, and that as a teacher you move the student forward or on. And then again, you can see the ones that they haven't tried or assigned. You get this for the whole class as a class summary, but you also can get it down to the student. What I like about these is all of them you can print, and you can send these home to the parents. So if you have those expectations that you've set with, okay, I need you through these workspaces by this date, you can take for each student and print those students report for those students who haven't maybe stayed up with where you needed, or those that were struggling with certain concepts. You can actually take and print this, save it as a PDF, and you can email it home to the parents or home to the students. If you have time, I know I have some schools that they've designed some one-on-one time to do some data talks with students to set goals and really make sure the students are achieving. Again, you can bring this up for the student that you're working with and talk about their progress, how well they're doing. Here, if you notice, this particular student did not master this concept, but you'll also notice that they didn't do a step-by-step. There is a strong correlation between if students skip the step-by-step, they tend to not master. Whereas if they do the step-by-step, they tend to do a lot better as they work through the problems. So again, encouraging the students to do the step-by-step and really trying, like reading what every little hint and every little box has for them so that they really understand how the problem is working. So you can print those out for individual students also and email them home, or you can have the data talks with them. Again, all that's going to come up is the date range that you've selected. So if you want to just have these talks about the whole picture from when you started the virtual learning to now, then go ahead and just keep the date range from your beginning of your class to the date that it is today. The next report that you have available to you guys is the sessions report. The sessions report can be really beneficial because, again, if you have those expectations that students are logging on a certain amount of minutes every week, or that they're logging on to the software on certain days, then you can actually monitor that and make sure that all of your students are logging in on the day or logging in the amount of time that you need for that particular week. So for the group summary, the sessions report is going to give you the dates that students logged in and the average time that students were on. So I have some schools that have it set that students are going to log in 3 days a week for 30 minutes each day, or for each one of those days, and they have the set days. So then it's really easy for the teacher to look and go, okay, did my students log in on the days I told them to? And how much time did they have? So for the group summary, this is the average time, average workspaces completed, and average problems completed for the entire class. You can also see when you scroll down, again, you can change that date range. So if you just want to look at the date for the last week, then again, change it to just that last week and look at that date range. Then when you scroll down, you actually can see for that date range that you set, how much total times the students were on. So again, if you have it set that they log on 45 minutes twice a week, then you know you're looking for 90 minutes of total time each week. You can see how many times they logged on to get that 90 minutes, so how many total sessions was there. You can also see their total number of problems and workspaces, and you can get a quick glimpse for the whole class in the group summary for that particular week or the 2 weeks that you might want to look at. Again, this is another report that you can take down to the student level. For that date range that you select, you can see for each individual student how many problems, how many workspaces, and their time that they were logged on. But when you go down to the student level, this is where you actually see the dates that they logged on, the times they logged on, and how long they were on for. You can also see how many errors and how many hints students took. Something to look out for when you're going through this is if students have excessive errors. So if they have like 57 errors and 0 hints, you want to encourage that student to take some hints to help them learn how to do the problem. Because what's happening is they're just typing in until they try to get the right answer, and now they're just making a lot of mistakes. That will give them a lot more problems too, Just like if they try to take hints to that third level where we give them the answer, we're going to give them more problems there also. Because either way, we're recognizing that they don't know how to do the problem. So again, if they're making a lot of errors, encourage them to use some hints to learn how to do the mathematics, and then release them. So again, we like to see these a little balanced. So if they have 6 errors, you also want around 6, 7 hints. Like I said, if you see that they have 57 hints and 0 errors, then again, talk to them. They're going to end up getting like 35 problems to do, which isn't fun for them. But it's also talking to the students about how to use the hints appropriately and the intent behind them, and that they can't hint themselves out of work. So the sessions report is going to give you a lot of information. If you actually want to see what that particular student did for that session, you can click on the session itself, and it will bring up even more information about that particular student session. So you're going to be able to see which module and which workspace the students mastered, and how many errors and hints it took them, along with how many problems. And you can see the one that they're in progress on and how many minutes so far they've worked. So the sessions report is great because that's checking for the amount of time that students did, and again, making sure that they're not making a lot of errors or taking excessive amounts of hints as they're working through all the workspaces. All right, the next one that we have is our skills report. What I love about the skills report is it's that granular information that as teachers in our classroom, we cannot actually evaluate every single student at. I know I used to go into the teacher's lounge and I would look at all the other math teachers. I'm like, oh my gosh, none of my 185 students can solve 2-step equations. And it wasn't that they all were struggling at the same place. All of them were struggling at a different place. But I didn't have the time to go through and find exactly where each individual student was struggling. So our software watches every keystroke, and again, we're adjusting the problem types that the students get based on where they're making their mistake. But then we're also telling you as a teacher, oh, this student is struggling when they're subtracting to both sides, or this student is struggling when they're dividing to both sides. And that one skill is where they didn't master or show mastery to 95%. So now if I do have to reteach something, I don't have to reteach the whole concept, and I don't have to guess what type of problem I need to give the students, because it's going to tell me. So with the virtual learning, this allows me to pull some small groups if I need. So I've had teachers that have the students log on, and then they've created some breakout rooms, and depending on the breakout room you got assigned to, that was where you were getting some reteach happening. So in the teacher, you can go in and out of different breakout rooms, and students can talk to each other and discuss problems, but you can do some reteaching. This is also where teachers have used the content browser to help reteach some of the things. But so with the skills report, what it tells you is it tells you the module that you're in, the unit that you're in, and then the workspace. From here, when you open up the workspace, it's going to identify all the skills that are within that workspace. So here we're looking at the workspace, writing direct variation equations, and then the skills that are in that are entering the change in quantity between 2 points, entering the equation of the line, and entering numeric ratios, along with entering the variable ratio. What I know is when I'm looking at this report, for entering the numeric ratio, all of my students, I have 10 of them in this class, all 10 of them mastered that with a 95% or better. Entering the variable ratio, all of those mastered that with 100%. Where I had some students struggling was entering the change in quantity between 2 points. So I had 8 of my 10 students actually master that, but 2 didn't master that particular skill. here, entering the equation of the line, I had 6 students that mastered it, but that also meant that I had 4 students that didn't master it. Or I've had, in this particular one, I had 3 that didn't master it, but 1 that's still working on it. So there's my 4 students out of my 10. But what you can see now is for entering the equation of the line. So if I'm just taking my ratios and everything that I've calculated for my constant proportionality, Dario and Sheridan were struggling with just substituting that in and writing the equation of that line. So they were having a hard time getting it into the y equals kx form. I know the next time that Dario or Sheridan sees this, Dario has a 27% chance of getting it correct when he sees it again, and Sheridan has a 29% chance of getting it correct when she sees it again. So again, this is where I can pull the small groups, but now instead of remediating and trying to teach the whole concept of writing a direct variation equation, I know exactly where the student struggled, and I just need to work with them on that particular part. To be on the proficient, again, that means that you have a 95% or greater. Near proficiency is anybody that is a 71 to a 94%. And then remediation suggested would be anybody a 70% or below. So the skills report gives you a lot of data, but it gives you that granular data so that you're not remediating the entire thing. And you're remediating the correct place and part. The next report that we have is the standards report. So again, the standards report, what it tells you is it tells you all the standards that are in that course that you have selected. So for this particular one, we have 36 standards. Of those 36, 16 of them have been attempted. And of those 16 that were attempted, 44%, we'll look here and we've got 56% were proficient of those standards that they attempted. 25% were near proficiency, so that's anybody that's between the 71 and 94%. And then 18.8% needed remediation on the standards that they attempted. Over here, you're also going to be able to see how many students out of your class have already attempted that standard. They're not going to show up on the standards report as attempted if they have not started that standard. So that's why there's some discrepancies in this. Like, so here I have 91% of my students who have attempted it, but I still have 9% that need to work on that standard. They haven't attempted it yet. So again, you're going to get just kind of a quick breakdown of how many of your students have attempted each one of the standards. But then when you scroll down, you get a glimpse quickly of how well students are doing on the standards that they have attempted and worked on. So for me, this is huge because if I see one entire standard that's like yellow and red for almost all of my students, then that's a standard that I need to reteach because they did not understand it. So for you guys right now, we're going to be looking at just the end of the year, like what we loaded into their MATHia software for this virtual learning time to finish out the year. What I love about this is now I actually have proof that the students actually mastered those standards, and when I ship them off to the next grade level, I know that they have those certain standards mastered. And then I also know if there was some standards I wanted them to get that they didn't master, I can now at least inform and let the grade level ahead kind of know, hey, they really did struggle with this particular standard. But it gives you that point where you can actually reteach a standard if you need to. Again, you get this for the class level. If you click on the box itself, you'll get the actual standard and what it is. You'll also be able to see for that particular student which workspace they struggled on and where they did not show mastery at that 95%. So you get a lot of information just from the group summary page, but you can also go down to the student level And now you can see for geometry, I don't have the geometry one open, but for ratios and proportional reasoning for that domain, you can see all the standards that are within that domain and how that student has done on that particular standard. You'll also notice that most of the standards, they're not a one-time shot. Students will get multiple touches and multiple attempts to show mastery, because again, we know mastery isn't like a one-time deal, that students need multiple touches with it in order to show it. So the beginning part of the standard, the student really did understand the first parts of it. Again, that was probably creating the ratios and creating stuff for direct variation and constant and proportionality. And then they struggled at the end. When you click on it, you can actually see where they were near proficient or where they were not proficient. This also can be printed, saved as a PDF, and sent home. So again, now you can have those talks and those data talks with students and parents if you need to. Are there any questions over the reports so far?
I think the biggest question, Jamie, at this point is just they have a 4-point rubric for standards-based grading.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this standards report will really lend to that model. And
Yeah.
so just if there's anything you want to mention about that, I think when we look at proficient, near proficient, and remediation suggested, we could figure out how to break those down into for Roosevelt into those four different categories. They're advanced, proficient, developing, and minimal.
Advanced, proficient, develop, and minimal. Yeah. So basically, if you're in really pretty easily, if you're in the green where it's at 95% mastery, I would say you're probably at a 4, right? You've actually shown that you have mastery to, that you've had the mastery to it. Where you're going to get your discrepancies for the 3 and 2, the 2 and 3, would be here in the near proficient, because that near proficient has a range of a 71 to a 94. So what we're going to need to figure out is, where do you want to have that cutoff between proficient and near proficient, because a 71 to a 94 is really big. And I would say any of my students from an 80 up to a 94 are going to be proficient. The ones that are between the 71 and 80 might struggle a lot, and they're still missing, as far as the way I look at it, they're missing still a lot of the concepts or a lot of the standards, or a lot of the ideas and skills. But we can work with you guys to create that rubric. But again, for us, this gives us proof now. And we can see exactly how well students have mastered standards, and we have it in a report. And again, it's not the only one. You probably are going to triangulate, but this is a great way to give some of the information. And then if you are giving assessments during the year and you're giving some of that, again, you have that other data that we can look at to help triangulate. Would they be a 3 or would they be a 2? Does that make sense?
It does for me. Maybe we can get some nods or yeses from the group.
Yeah.
There's a couple more questions as we head into this, and I don't know if we can do this, but maybe you know better than me. Can the student grades be transferred to Gradebook and Synergy? Is Synergy an LMS? Is it a student management system? What is Synergy? First off.
Well, so here's the thing with MATHia, right? Is this is telling you how they're doing, but it is not giving grades. So there's nothing from MATHia that you would transport into your grade book, because that's going to be you inputting your stuff for your what you're giving for assessments in your classroom, your textbook stuff. With MATHia, really, it's giving you the knowledge of how well a student is performing on certain things, but we're not assigning any grades. The way teachers grade, I've seen across the board a lot of different ways, and that's something that as we go into a regular school year, and we can talk about kind of best ways for grading. Again, I've had some teachers that were like, oh, well, I just grade off of how many problems they do. But then I have to push back and go, is that really fair? Because students that do fewer problems and master quicker should not be penalized because they know how to do the work. And otherwise, students that struggle are going to get more problems. So again, it's just grading it off of one thing is really hard because we're looking at the whole big picture of the student. But if you are standards-based grading, again, I think this report is one piece of data for you that you actually can print and show. Like, I know when I was at the district, we never used just one thing to show proficiency. We triangulated data because we wanted to make sure we had the big picture for the students, because MATHia wasn't just it. Right now it might be it, but in the next year, when we are in that blended learning environment where we do have the textbooks and we have MATHia and then we have our assessments, you have other data too that you're going to put into their grades.
And Sabrina reconfirmed that and said, and we are grade based on how the student performs on the completed standard. So I do think this standard report will help a lot with finding that out.
Yes.
And then Eric has a question. And I think I can answer this. Do other teachers we are working with have access, or we need to share our username passwords with teachers? Every teacher should have their own access within Roosevelt. So that should not be a problem. Are we facing that issue? I want to find out. Eric, are you not able to get in, or are there issues?
I'm here.
Okay.
No, the question, because I work with the special ed teacher and she works with some of my students.
Yes.
Okay. How does that work? Would she have to use my username and password, or would she still be able to see all of the students that would she be able to see all the 7th and 8th graders?
So right now we're not able to add a co-teacher to your class. But what we tend to do when we have the SPED teachers or intervention teachers that do need to see data for students that are your students, but they also need it to be able to write IEPs and also to work with the students with setting their goals and stuff. We make the SPED teachers or intervention teachers admins or supervisors, and then they're able to see all the students and they can pull up the students that they have that are in your classes.
Great, thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right, any other questions? Does this help with those that have started using the MATHia with, oh, now I can see how I can have some data talks with my students and looking to see when I set those goals, how well my students are progressing through those goals that I've set for them.
Okay, so we have a yes, I love these reports. And we have a couple other questions. It looks like first off, Charla is having an issue getting signed in through Clever. I want to repeat to everyone, please do not create classes, log in through Clever. That will mess things up. So if you're not there yet, then we need to connect you with our help center and make sure that your classes are loaded. And I will please go to Sabrina if you're experiencing something like Charla. That way we can collect all the teachers who can't yet get in via Clever, and we can figure that out with on our side with the IT folks.
And some of it could be just depending on if you're like a SPED teacher, or that maybe you guys, that group of teachers didn't get checked to be Clever integrated. So, and that's okay, because it's really easy. Once we talk to the IT department, we know who you are, then we can check that and they'll be uploaded and ready to go. So there could just be something that wasn't checked.
So, sorry, go ahead. Yeah, go.
So a couple of things, please let me know, because it could be just the way your bell schedules are set up. This was shared with all math sections. So it just depends on whether you have a math section or not in your bell schedule, which almost everyone should. And then also if you are a resource teacher. But we can work through that.
Yep. Yeah. And then
who's having issues?
Yeah, so make sure that you guys reach out and let Sabrina know who's having issues. The other thing is, Sabrina, you actually can turn on all of the teachers that need supervisor access, like your SPED teachers and stuff. You can change their, if they're a teacher or supervisor, and you and I can hop on a call and I'll show you how you can do that.
Yes, absolutely, because we have a couple of ways to do that. One through Clever, and the other one I think through MATHia, right?
Yeah, so, and yes, exactly. And our MATHia is, it's pretty easy, but I think we can also do it through Clever to identify who are the supervisors. Yes.
Okay, and then Charlotte put a note in there to you, Sabrina, that you may want to read in the chat.
Yeah.
And then Carolyn, I think that just answered your question as well about who makes special needs teachers admin. That will go through Sabrina, and Jamie's going to work with her on that. And then, okay, good. Nora's looking at the reports as you go through this with your own students. That's awesome. You're looking at your student data. Nora, Dave says this will really help us students already assigned work, but now I know how to track progress. Perfect. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
This is actually really great data. I think it helps you. I think as a teacher even adjust on the fly if you need to. So
yeah,
it's pretty neat.
And then we have one more report, and I don't think this report. Oops. Sorry. This report really isn't going to be one that you would use a lot right now in this virtual learning, especially because we just started it and some of us are all in different places, right? But next year we have the adaptive personalized learning score. What I love about this test or this report is it actually is showing you a year-long projection or picture of how the students are doing. So basically, a lot of times in our districts, we give like the MAP testing or the iReady testing, and we do that 3 times a year to see their growth. And then we figure out, oh, as a teacher, oh, what do I need to adjust to help my students grow more on the grade level standards for the end of the year? But what this one does is we actually are evaluating and we're assessing the students every time they log in instead of 3 times a year. So this one here is showing you their average improvement every time they log in from Sunday to Sunday. So you can see how the students are doing. If the students are projected to finish on track by the end of the year. So what this does is it takes their work, and it's not just like this percentage here is not just how much of the work they've completed, but it is also how well they've completed it. So this axis, the x-axis, just takes the time or the amount of content assigned to the students, and we divide it up over the weeks for the school year. And then the y-axis is actually how many hints, how many errors, how much time it took them to complete the problems based on the national average. So it has everything in it as a teacher that you want, and we're looking at how well they're performing. We also know that if a student is projected to finish on track at the end of the year, and on track is anywhere between a 70 to 100%, on this report, if they are projected to finish on track at the end of the year, we know that 96% of those students are passing their state test. So again, but instead of assessing 3 times a year, we are assessing every time the students are getting onto the software. You can look at a date range you can change the date range to this just to be a week or to be 2 weeks, and you can see their improvement score for that just 2-week period. And the improvement score is basically the rate of change or the slope between the 2 points that you're looking at. So again, we're looking at that growth. We're looking at how well students are performing, how many hints, how many errors, and again, how much time it took them to complete the workspaces based on national averages for the workspaces that they're on and where they should be. So this report is a great report. We do need the students on 90 minutes a week for it to really have the whole picture for the students. If the students are not getting on 90 minutes a week, they're always going to kind of show in the red, because that means we're not even giving them enough time to show what they are doing at their potential. All right.
Eric asked a question about something similar to this or some of the other reporting where the students can see, and I told him that's not yet available, but I figured I'd let you address that, Jamie, a little bit further.
So right now, all of the reports are not available for students. Again, those are where you're going to have to either have some data talks or some individual meetings with students. Sometimes what I did is I walked around with this on my iPad, and I just, as students were working on the software, I sat down and I showed them their projection, and then I talked to them, how are you going to get from off track, which is anything below a, what was that one? Sorry, I'm on a prototype one, so it doesn't tell me everything that I need. But you can talk to them about how are you going to move from being off track to being on track. What are some things you can do? So again, having students setting their expectations for their behavior when they're on the software, reading through the problems, taking hints and stuff if they're making too many errors, or if just so it's having those communication and those talks with them. So we don't have it right now for the students. We have every intention to make sure that we do roll these out for the students. But again, we have like 5 developers, and yeah, so they're doing their best that they can. We wanted to make sure we supported the teachers first before we gave the students access. The one thing that students can see, and I'll go ahead and show you this, is they can see, again, in the student side of it, they can see how many problems and how many workspaces they've completed in that session, and also in for the total for the year so far. So right here, when students log in, this is the first screen that a student sees. They actually can see this session, how much time they were logged in, how many problems, and how many workspaces. Also know that if a student is logged in, again, and they're just sitting there, we're going to deduct that so we know if they're idle or not. And then they actually can see their total amount and how much of the syllabus they've completed. Okay, so students do have some information, they just don't have the in-depth reports that you get as a teacher. All right, any more questions? I know our time is up, and I don't want to, I want to be very respectful of time too. So if there's questions, feel free, I'll stay on. If there aren't, if you're feeling good, no problem, you can log off. I won't be sad and hurt. And then we'll, and if you have any questions, please have Sabrina reach out to us, and we'll always be able to answer them. All right, any other questions coming through, Dave, or no?
I think somebody asked one about, a lot of people are saying thank you, which we're grateful you guys all came for sure. But there was a question that said they wonder how this might relate to the AZ merit format. I don't know if that's reporting or
when you guys when we created your classes, we put the Arizona State standards in there. So again, that 96% relates to the AZ merit, to the Florida, to the Utah. We've done studies across the country to make sure that 96%.
Real quick.
Yes.
I'm going to ask the question. The reason, what I'm asking about isn't what standards are covered, because I understand you guys are aligning it to our Arizona standards. I'm talking about the technology of plotting points on the AZ merit, things like that, that my students totally don't know how to do.
So the good thing that you guys are going to have is, yes, they're going to drag and drop, they're going to plot points using our software. You guys next year will also have access to Edge Elastic to create your assessments. What we have done with our PDF assessments when we put them into Edge Elastic is we tech enhance them. And those, if you go into Edge Elastic and look at some of the different tech enhanced questions from Carnegie, you will see they almost mirror the AZ merit and how it is asked and how students have to actually plot on the computer or draw on a number line. All of that is in there with Edulastic. The beauty of the Edulastic is it will also grade it for you as long as it's not an essay type question, but it does have multi-part questions. So the Edulastic mimics the AZ Merit. Our software also has a lot of those drag and drops, pull downs. So again, giving students that practice that will help them with the state testing.
Does that help, Charla?
Yes, yeah, that's awesome.
Okay, so Renuka asked